Welcome to the Capital Coffee Connection podcast. I'm Liz Hirsch-Naftali, and I am thrilled today because I am getting the opportunity to speak to Congresswoman Lisa Blunt Rochester. She is a congresswoman at large in Delaware, and she is also a candidate for the U.S. Senate. And one of the things that I love about our podcast is that we get to meet with really incredible elected officials, but we don't talk about politics and policy. We really are here to talk about the heart and the humanity, the home people come from, and I think just the hopes that they have. And one of the things, first, I want to welcome you.
Thank you, Liz. It's great to be here with you. It's always great to be with you, but especially on your podcast.
Thank you. And one of the things that I was, reading about was hope in your life, and that you attended the Bright Hope Church and with your grandmother. And you talk about that as being a spiritual home and a place where you really grew and learned about resilience and learned about your power. And I'd love for us, I want to go back to your childhood, but I'd really love to know about that, because I think one of the places that is really important for people is to understand that we all have different beginnings. Yeah. But yet we all are kind of connected by this idea of hope. And how do we strengthen each other, but strengthen ourselves through that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. It actually is the theme of my campaign, is Bright Hope. And as you said, Bright Hope was the name of Bright Hope Baptist Church in Philadelphia, was the name of the church my grandmother attended for over 70 years. For me as a little girl, our family moved to Delaware in 1969. And so when we would go back home to Philadelphia to visit my grandparents on both sides, Bright Hope was one of the places that was sort of like a mainstay, that we would worship with my grandmother. And I think, for me, it is not just the name of a church, but it's a way of being, especially when things feel dark. I always tell people, even if it's the size of a match, my match plus your match can create bright hope. And, in a time where some people would feel like our light is being dimmed, we need this more than ever. I think it's important for us to think back to the things that we've been through to give us the faith of what we can accomplish. For me, even my journey to get here to this position really started from something very challenging. I had never run for anything in my life. As you know, until 2015, I announced I was going to run for office. In 2016, having lost my husband, who had gone on a business trip and ruptured his Achilles tendon playing basketball before his meetings, and blood clots ultimately went to his heart and lungs. And at 52, Charles passed away. Just a very humble, smart, funny, kind person. And I, in that moment, could not figure out why did this happen? Why do we even exist on this planet?
Yes.
And
something so unfair.
Yeah, and I'm a person of faith, as you know, and I thought I was going to lose my faith in that moment. And it literally was just kind of being on autopilot. And I think sometimes a lot of people feel like they're just on autopilot, trying to go through how I was feeling and process it. And I always tell the story that I was almost about 10 months later, standing in the line at the supermarket about to check out. And I saw a dad in front of me with 3 kids put back grapes because they were $9. And it snapped me out of my own pain. Yes. And I started thinking, I'm okay. I'm blessed. I'm going to be okay. Charles put everything in order before he passed away. I had a home. I had a job. I had a family. But a lot of people were struggling. And I decided, I have nothing to lose and everything to give, and I'm going to run. And so I ran. Why not run for Congress? Why not? I ran for Congress, but that journey even started 30 years before that as an intern in the congressional office for our current senator when he was in Congress.
So I read one place where you were pregnant and you were holding a baby in your arms, and you said, "I'm here to volunteer." And I thought to myself, okay, that's a woman, for you. But that story when your daughter, you were pregnant and you had a baby in your arms and you were out there saying, "Let me help."
Well, I actually went to a town hall meeting I was a grad student, and as you said, I had my 2-year-old son Alex on my hip. I didn't realize it at the time. I was pregnant with my daughter Alyssa, and I went to the town hall, and afterwards the then congressman said, hey, we have internships in our office. If you want to help out, you can apply and get. And I applied to that internship, and then became a caseworker in his office, helping people with Social Security disability and housing. I then served in his cabinet as Deputy Secretary of Health and Social Services and Secretary of Labor, which I loved that job. I mean, like, helping people to connect to their purpose, and helping employers find job seekers. I love that job. It started from going to a town hall,
right,
saying, how can I get engaged? How can I be a part of helping people not just survive, but to thrive? And that was sort of like the journey from the caseworker to the cabinet member and now to his colleague, which is unbelievable to me, and hopefully be able to replace him in the Senate. So that's our goal.
When you say, I just, decided to run, but you had a lot of experience before, so you understood the power of your being able to participate and make a change.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I think back, I love the whole point of your show is sort of like, well, who are we, right? Why do we end up where we end up? And, that kid born in the 1960s in Philadelphia, there were a lot of things that I saw as a kid. I mean, it was a civil rights era. Yeah. It was on the heels of that. It was, the women's movement going into the 70s, the Black Power movement, all of these different things. Even something we used to call it ecology. Now we talk about climate change. We had, things like Woodsy the Owl, give a hoot, don't pollute,
Exactly.
You remember all of these things where it, I think, shaped and formed my desire to speak up. Number one, speak up sometimes for those who did not have a seat at the table. I think it informed my desire to save this planet. It all goes back to that kid, that little girl.
Experienced and what you saw.
And then having family members around me, like my grandmother and grandfather, who worked at a steel plant as a ball bearing factory, and they were union leaders. Or, my grandmother, who on the other side, who was a nurse, and my dad, who worked in, public service as well. Everything from doing youth violence interventions in Philadelphia to moving us to Delaware to work at the People's Settlement Association in the community, and then him going on to become focused in education and also city council president. So
it's like in your DNA.
I was going to say
it's like nature and nurture put together.
Exactly. And I think those things help to shape and form this desire for public service and making the world a better place.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I thought about when I started this, which was really about like the humanity of people, because I want also young people to be able to look and see not the cutout or not the negative hype that you see a lot on 24/7 news,
right,
but to just say, wow, I can relate to that person. Yeah. She looks like me, or she had similar experiences. I can be that person.
Right.
And I think sometimes we get lost in this modeling of, it's only negative. So Thank you.
No.
But I have a question about Delaware and Delawareans. Like, what makes people in your state special?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. Well, I want to touch on something too that you just said as well, because it dovetails into the question about what makes Delawareans so special. But I think that me running for office at that time had hoped that it would be an inspiration, because Delaware had never elected a woman to Congress.
Right.
We had never elected a person of color to Congress.
Right.
And a lot of times, people will say, like, what does it feel like to make history? And for us, it's less about that, even though that's important, but about making a difference. But also it is about representation. So when I think about it, I was also over 50. So for all of those people out there thinking, I don't know if I could start something new at certain parts of your life, I also had been widowed and was going through grief, but sometimes you can turn that pain into purpose. And so I think what I hope is representative for people, like you just said, is for people to see themselves in me. When I was a cabinet secretary, I was really young. And I remember someone saying that was to report to me. I had heard that they weren't going to like take orders from some young person. I even had braces on my teeth. And it was like people were like, how old is she? And so at the time, I knew what the mission was. And I hope that inspires people. And when I look at the state of Delaware, what's so special about Delaware is I think we're really a microcosm of the country. I mean, one of our former governors, Jack Markell, called us a state of neighbors. And we are literally in one little state. We're urban, suburban, rural, and coastal because we have beaches. We've got farms. And our demographics really mirror the country as well. And for me, Delaware is just a very special place. I mean, that state of neighbors means something. It means that when you got to solve a problem, we try to come together, right, across party lines, up and down the state. It also means that, in the words of one of our senators, Chris Coons, I always remark on something. He said that in Delaware, you've either dated, related, or made it. I mean, like we are like very close to each other.
Made it. Okay.
Yeah. You go into Target, you might see the president, or down at the beach getting ice cream, you might see the first lady, getting her nails done where my mom gets her nails done. And I think that it makes us also close to issues. So for me, as a congressperson, I'm going to hear about our supply chain challenges. And that's why I champion those things. I'm going to hear from our environmental justice communities who in Delaware, we are the lowest mean elevation state in the country. A lot of people don't know that. But when it rains, there are communities where it literally floods. But we also have our farmers who are concerned about climate, as well as those coastal communities. So I feel like we represent all of the country, and we do it in a way that I think is unique as well, in that we're pretty close-knit. I felt blessed to be able to serve this very diverse community or state. And so I have a saying, I will yell out to an audience, when Lisa goes to Washington, they'll yell back, we all go to Washington. We all go.
That's a great line. Yeah. And look, politics is personal.
Yes.
Doesn't matter which side. It's about people.
Right.
So what you've just described is that they're going to Washington with you because you are taking them with you.
Exactly.
And you're taking their thoughts and you've listened to them, and it's pretty special. Yeah. So you went to high school in Wilmington, and did you raise your kids in the same?
So my children both were raised in Delaware, both graduated from Delaware public schools and went on to HBCUs. And my son graduated from Morgan State, and my daughter in Maryland, and my daughter graduated from Winston-Salem State University in North Carolina. But they had spent their whole formative years growing up in Delaware. And and I think that's also a special part about Delaware. Like, it's just a great place to raise a family.
Yeah.
So now I have my first grandchild who was born in Delaware. She is now 14 months old, Lennox. And it's so different to see things through the eyes of a grandparent. She inspires me. My kids definitely inspired me, but, it's different being a mom.
Yeah, than being a grandma.
And
also think about, like, when she grows up, she's going to say to people, I am fourth generation, I'm third generation Delawarean. My family has been in this state for many years. Yeah. And I think that also, in a big country, to have that as a grounding piece is beautiful.
Oh, it definitely is. For me, she is truly a blessing that she's even here. I've shared one of the reasons why I'm so passionate as well about reproductive freedoms is because, Lennox would not be here if it were not for IVF. In a country where we're a developed nation and we see all of the great blessings we have, we're also a country where maternal mortality is on the rise instead of going down.
Yes, I know.
And, knowing that my daughter-in-law in the first go-round of IVF had a miscarriage, and knowing that the chances of her not being here were greater just because she's a Black woman, inspires me to do this work, between making sure that Ebony's alive, my daughter-in-law. I call her my daughter-in-law because I love her so much.
I think it's beautiful. Yeah, I hadn't heard that before, but I heard it. I got it right away.
Yeah, and my granddaughter, Lennox, and then my daughter, that, she can have the same rights as I did to do with her body. I feel that's part of my personal mission as well.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and look, it affects you personally.
Yes.
But you use that opportunity to make sure that others who don't have the abilities that you do, to have that seat at the table that we keep talking about, that you can represent what their needs are.
Exactly.
So I'm going to back up and just ask you, is it true you actually worked at McDonald's once upon a time?
That was my first job.
Okay, tell me, because I think these first jobs, I mean, we could talk about politics, but I think sometimes these first jobs people don't realize, like, oh my God,
yeah,
she worked at McDonald's?
Yeah. Oh.
And what you learned probably. So if you could just tell us a little bit.
Well, it's funny. I think somebody said like 1 in 8 Americans have worked at a McDonald's. I don't know, something like that, but a lot of members of Congress. But I think for me, one of the big lessons is how may I serve you? I mean, it's been pretty much the same sort of, trajectory is all about service. And recently, since I've been in Congress, I started this bipartisan future work caucus.
Okay.
And part of it was that I felt like Democrats and Republicans, we need to come together and talk about these things like automation, artificial intelligence, how they will affect the workplace. And I recently, a couple of years ago, went to work at a McDonald's for take your Congresswoman to work day kind of thing. And I had on the headset and I'm in the drive-through and cups are flying down, ice is coming out. I'm hearing people in my ear and it was really like a throwback to how things have changed as well, even working at McDonald's. Right. And so for me, it was my first job. And the reason why I even got the job was because I said to my dad, I was like, I want my own telephone in my room.
Right.
And
there were no cell phones. You were getting that. So I know you're getting a little little cute little phone.
And my dad was like, you want a phone? Go get a job. So I walked up to I walked blocks to get to the McDonald's and I just applied for the job. And that started my kind of connection to jobs and work.
I love
was McDonald's.
Yeah, and I always think if you learn how to service and work with people, whether they're nice or not nice, or they're having a good day or a bad day, you need to know how to respond.
It's so true. Now that you said that, I think it helps me to recognize why it's one of the strengths I try to have on the floor of the house is just listening, understanding, figuring out, okay, how can we achieve a common goal here? Yeah. Whether it's getting you coffee or us getting clean slate across the finish line.
Exactly. Yeah. And those are things that you get as a young person, the tools that you acquire. Okay. Now I'm going to skip to, at your swearing in, you wore a scarf. You carried a scarf. And I've heard the story, but I'd love for you to tell everybody, because I think it's a truly beautiful story. Mm-hmm. And it really just talks about how many generations of your family have been in America and where they started as slaves.
Yeah. Well, we knew we were going to have this historic moment for Delaware. And so I said to my sisters, I was like, I really want to wear something special. This is an important moment. And so I thought, well, Shirley Chisholm was the first Black woman elected to Congress. Maybe I'll wear what Shirley wore. Okay, it was the 1970s. I was like, I'm not wearing that. That's not an option. Okay. And so one of my sisters had done a lot of research on our family and found a document that allowed our great-great-great-grandfather, who had been a freed slave, to have the ability to vote. And I keep it with me everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Good.
We turned the document into a scarf that I carried on the day that I was sworn in. And
what year was that?
This document is from 1867. It is the Returns of Qualified Voters and Reconstruction Oath. Yeah. And at the bottom here is his X, because he could not read or write. He just had to mark the X. Alfred Funkley. Yeah. And he was from Georgia. And I think, for me, this is so special because I use this as the proof of what we've been through.
Yep.
Kind of circling all the way back to Bright Hope.
Yep.
When we remember, we've been through slavery. We've been through world wars. We've been through women locking arms for the right to vote.
Yeah.
Even a pandemic. This is my proof that we've been through tough things.
Yep.
And it's also my inspiration that there is more to come. I think about Linux when I think about the future and the inspiration. And so I carried this on the day I was sworn in, but I also carried it on January 6th, the day of the insurrection, when, as you know, I was trapped up in the gallery because they had cleared the floor of the House.
There's a famous video. I mean, somebody had shown a view there.
Yeah, and they forgot we were trapped up in the gallery. And all I could think to do at that moment was pray. And I prayed for all of us. Somebody actually transcribed what I said. For me, that moment, I think, as I look back on it, the anniversary made me say, I'm not going to shrink back. I'm going to lean in.
Rise up.
I'm going to rise up. I'm going to continue to fight for democracy.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I'm running, is to continue to fight for democracy.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing it, because I had seen that in a picture, and it's beautiful.
Thank you.
And it's really important also, the concept of where we came from.
Yes.
And to acknowledge it.
Yeah.
And to build from it. That's kind of the other part, which is like home. Like our homes have many years. And I've also interviewed and spoken with many of your colleagues that came from other countries.
Yes.
But the importance of where they came from,
right,
and acknowledging why their families, many of them had to leave, and then what America gave to them, and some of the difficulties of being in America and being an immigrant family.
Yeah.
But then their public service, and why they, when they go to work each day, as you do, they may not have that, but they carry something with them that is also equally important to them and their heritage. But it all comes together in our leadership. And that to me is beautiful.
Yeah, it is beautiful.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's special.
Okay, before I have a quick round of questions, but before I just wanted to know, and I've asked this a lot of times, what is the best advice you've ever received, and what is the worst advice?
I think one of the best pieces of advice I received was from this woman executive who talked to me about the fact that as women, a lot of times we will focus on the 5% of something we got wrong instead of the 95% that we did well.
Yes.
It's a good piece of advice was be gentle with yourself. I'm not always that, but it was this whole notion of, instead of seeking perfection, seek excellence.
Yes.
And excellence changes depending on the day. It's like the 4 agreements. The last one is do your best. Well, my best is different when I'm sick than when I'm well, but do your best. And I think being gentle with ourselves is something that was like a really good piece of advice to me.
That's beautiful.
Let's see the worst piece of advice. You get a lot of advice in life from people, and you're like,
especially when you're in leadership.
Yes. It is interesting. I remember somebody told me, there are probably a whole lot of other bad pieces of advice, but the first thing that popped into my head was someone who said when I was first running, don't mention that you're Black or a woman. I was like, it's kind of obvious when I walk in a room. So thank you so much for that piece of advice.
Was that from a man?
No, actually it wasn't.
Wow.
But a couple of people, there have been men that have said that too. And I just think, what I hope people will do is be all of who you are.
Show up.
Yeah. And I do think that it is sometimes hard to do that, for folks. But I've always found when I am all of who I am, I connect better with people. And sometimes you make assumptions that you might not connect with someone. But I like to try to find that common ground. But I think part of it is back to what your purpose for doing that. It's our humanity. It is connecting to each other's humanity.
Yes.
And really appreciating all of who we are, all of what we bring. That part gets me excited.
Yeah.
That gets me excited.
Yeah. No, that's how our world should be.
Yeah.
Political, on the street, where we connect with people. based on our heart and our humanity.
Yeah.
As opposed to what we see a lot of times where people entrench and don't connect and don't want to know.
Right.
And that does not lead to happier people, and it does not lead to better results. And I'm hoping that through this podcast that we are able to share, even if it's small, like you started in the beginning with small lights.
Yes.
That then get together to really illuminate.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
If I could steal your, visual.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. And it's funny because when I tie those two together, there's another piece of advice I got, which was be conscious but not consumed.
It's a good one.
And in this moment, it's so important. I'm conscious that people might have isms when I walk into a door, but if I let that consume me, I'm not effective. I can't get things done.
Right.
And it's sort of, in this moment, yeah, we can be conscious that things are challenging, but if we let it consume us, we're not going to be able to have a planet that we can live on. We're not going to be able to find peace. We're not going to be able, we can be conscious of it, but don't let it consume us.
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think about that one more, but it's right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now I have some rapid questions.
Oh, boy.
They're just easy ones to get to know Lisa.
Okay.
And you can answer however you choose.
Okay.
What is your favorite sound?
I love a baby laughing.
Yes.
It just, like if you're on a plane and you hear the giggle in the back, it makes me
That's nice. Happy. What is your favorite color?
Ooh, that's tough. Ooh, because I love...
Give a few.
Oh, good. Okay, I can give a few. Okay, well then, my campaign colors are blue and orange because to me it's like the sky and the sun rising. Yeah. And orange is such a happy, vibrant color. But I also love green lately, and I like especially lime green. It is like a pop,
I love that.
It's like vibrant.
Right. Well, your scarf has a bunch of those colors on them.
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
I do have a little bit of yellow, blue, orange. I got it.
Yeah. It's alive. What is your favorite smell?
Bread baking. I love the smell of walking into some place and you're like, bread. That smells
good. A good one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Carbs are us.
Exactly. It's hard to determine good smelling bread. What is your favorite meal? Like if you were on a desert island and you had one meal that they were going to give you.
Wow.
And that was the best meal for you, what would it be?
Okay. It used to be like most of my life, because my grandmother on my mother's side, she was the best cook ever, and my mother. And it used to be like roast beef with collard greens and macaroni and cheese and like a Parker House roll. You just got to have bread. It used to be like that. But I love shrimp. So I'm like a big shrimp person too. And if I was on a desert island,
it doesn't have to be a desert food, but just something that you had to get one thing. Like, what would it be?
Now I'm going back to collard greens. I love collard greens.
Okay, we'll keep the collard greens.
Yes, yeah. They're good for you, too.
This could be but I interviewed Karen Bass once, and she said one of her favorite meals was salmon and kale. And I thought to myself, salmon and kale? But that was what she ate as a child.
And you know what?
And it made her feel comfortable. And I have that same thing. It's comfort food.
Comfort. And that's why I mentioned my grandmother, because that's exactly what I went back to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I've actually had dinner with Karen Bass on a number of occasions, and I have seen her eat salmon and kale.
Isn't that interesting? Yes. And, if you said to me, what's yours? I would literally tell you tuna casserole. I'm vegan, but I used to eat, my mom would make this amazing tuna casserole. And it was just one of those things where everybody sat around the table and it was crunchy on the outside,
yes,
divine on the inside. So I'm going off on a tangent, but it was so good.
Yeah.
So I can,
comfort food.
It makes us smile.
Yes, yes. I forgot to mention mashed potatoes or rice with the gravy.
Yeah.
But anyway,
I got a little more carbs in there.
Yeah. You got it.
Favorite music, like if your playlist.
Beyonce.
Beyonce. Okay.
Cowboy Carter's.
Yeah, Cowboy Carter's great.
So, yes. But I love also, like one of my favorite songs is actually Don't Rain on My Parade by Barbra Streisand. My family, I know they think I'm like, I will break out into a Broadway tune in a minute. I mean, between Barbra Streisand, Hamilton or Wicked, like a song from Wicked. I love Broadway as well. So.
I love it.
Yeah.
Okay, now this is a hard one. Your favorite household chore?
You're right. That is a hard one. Let's see. Be my favorite household chore. I don't mind loading the dishwasher. I actually kind of like cleaning off the surfaces and stuff in the kitchen. There's something like you feel like really satisfied.
Yeah.
After Everything's clean off. Yeah, yeah. So I would probably say cleaning the kitchen, even though my family would say, yeah, right, Mom. But go ahead.
What is your superpower?
Superpower. I think it is connecting people to each other to get things done. Like, I get pumped, especially when it's like strange bedfellows. I feel like it is about bringing people together and trying to help us see love. Like, love is like, to me, the superpower.
Yeah, man. If you were going to travel somewhere, where have you never been that you would love to go?
Oh, let's see. I've never been to Kenya or South Africa or Mauritius. Those are places that are on my bucket list. I actually have an app called Ben, Been, and it's like you put down all the places in the world that you've been. Right. So I've been to like 34 countries.
But mostly for work, I'm assuming.
No, actually, my son was born in France. I love to my family, we did a great trip to Italy one year that I bid on and I won it in a raffle thing. I love the world. I was an international relations major. So I love traveling for fun, for work. I've been in Jordan on a USAID assignment, but it's something about seeing the world. And there's like so many places I haven't been yet.
Yeah.
But I've been to Iceland. I've been, I love the world.
Yeah, I love traveling. Yeah,
me too.
I'm going to just go towards the end because I think it's a good way for us, especially after, I always think about people when they get to travel, they get to broaden their horizons.
Yeah.
And, when people don't get to see other things, they stay perhaps limited. So I think that travel, and I know that you spent time in Europe when you were young, and I think that probably, we go back to like who you are and what you also know other people's experience. So when you come back to America, you appreciate certain things about America all more.
Yes.
But you also understand how the world lives, which is important.
Yeah.
I think not even as an elected person, as a leader, but just as an American.
Yes.
But now skipping from that to, again, this is about like this quality of people. My last question I always ask is about joy. So my question is, what is joy to you? What is your definition of joy? What brings you joy? And I think Lennox is right up there, but what brings you joy?
Yeah.
And then how do you take that joy and share it with others, whether it's through family or friends or through your work?
Ooh, that's a lot.
I know.
A lot. So you asked what brings me joy? How do I share that joy? It is important for us to try to find joy when it feels joyless, if that makes sense. A lot of times we talk about happiness is based on what's happening, but joy is something that's more internal. And as you said, my granddaughter brings me joy. Just seeing, I just stare at her sometimes, and just see the potential of who she is and who she will be and who she is right now. That brings me joy. When my husband died, I remember thinking, what can bring me joy right now? I started bird watching, which was really, I just went to like Barnes and Noble, got a book on birds, and I got an app, and I remember thinking there's a scripture in the Bible that if God would take care of the birds and the trees and why would he not take care of me? And so in that moment when I was scared, it was like, you're going to be okay. You're going to be okay.
Yeah.
And so sometimes just silence and solitude and looking up at the sky, like it doesn't cost a lot of money to look up. It doesn't cost anything to look up. Every night and in the morning have rituals that help me to make it on even tough days. Like every night I like to take a Epsom salt lavender bath. That's my time. I started it when my kids were little. They knew, don't knock on that door because I am in my bathtub. It's my time, but it helped me to like breathe, that brings me joy. And listening to music and dance. I'm a dancer. As a kid, I studied ballet. I love dancing. It brings me joy. And I think in this moment, it's important for all of us to get a little internal and remember, what are the things that bring me joy? And do them.
Yeah.
Take a minute to look up. Take a minute to look at a bird or a kid or try to solve a problem and then be so pumped about it. Like, that brings me joy at work.
Right.
Like in Congress, I get pumped when I can find something that people are like, we can't agree, but we come to an agreement on it. And I can say, look, this is a bipartisan bill that we got out of committee unanimously. That brings me joy, even in the work, even in the cleaning the counter and seeing, that's done. That brings joy.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. It's a lot of pretty interesting images, but they are also all powerful and very different. So thank you. I read a quote that you had said, "A more perfect nation is not a destination. It is a journey." And, one of the things that has been special about this time together is that I feel like I'm part of your journey. And I do think that I want people to understand where you come from, where you are, who you are now, and where you intend to go. And I just want to say thank you for sharing your authentic self and being real, because I think people are looking for authenticity and they're looking for real and hope, heart, humanity. But to really get to know who you are as a woman, a person, a grandmother, a mother, a leader, and somebody that does spread joy. So thank you so much for coming here today.
Thank you so much, Liz. And, again, as you said, it is a journey.
Yeah.
And I think right now it's up to all of us what direction we take this journey.
Absolutely.
Are we going forward? Are we trying to go backwards? I believe we're trying to go forward, and that's what I'm working towards. And that's why I appreciate what you're doing, because I think, again, it helps to also restore people's faith in humanity in the work that we're doing.
Yeah.
Because they need to see us and know that, it's not all what you might hear out there. We're human. We're connected to our constituents, to the people that we serve. And as we look towards that more perfect union, we know we're not necessarily perfect today. None of us are. But are we working to get there? And for me, that's why Bright Hope is such a theme, because we feel like if all of us take the internal little matches inside of us, we can create a path to a journey that is positive and peaceful for all of us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Liz.
Hi, it's Liz. Please join me every Tuesday for coffee to talk about heart and humanity with our elected leaders. Ciao.